Yeah. This is HBR News number 529, Slender Man Stabber Follow-Up, Italy Recognizes Femicide, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello everybody and welcome back to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. I'm your host Brian. I'm joined by, as always, my lovely co-hosts Hannah Wallen and Dr. Randomercam. We have a great show lineup for you guys this week, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. On this week's show, we're going to be doing a little bit of a follow-up on the Slender Man stabbing. You guys might remember that, you might not. It was kind of a weird one, and there's actually some more weirdness that's come out of that. There was a recent National Guard shooting, not the National Guard was shot at, not committing the shooting, in our nation's capital, DC. Italy made some changes to its laws to basically make women the biggest victims of everything again and more, so stick around, it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So right here I have this article from The Times, which I think is just the New York Times, but it's because it's not just New York, it's the world now, it's Globo Homo stuff. They have this article called Men Are in Trouble, so we have an admission that men are in crisis of some kind. There are problems, but whose fault is it? Whose fault really? Not that because some people just want to get the problems addressed. Some people want to talk about whose fault it is. So I don't know where they're going to land on this, but I can make some educated guesses. And if you guys want to join us for this little adventure, please become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com/subscribe. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to watch all the additional content, including our patron shows. And if you gave a higher levels, you can actually be in the discussions yourself. You can participate and talk directly to us and, yell at us or whatever, because we're not, based enough or whatever it is. But yeah, feel free to become a badger. Go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we've been yeeted from the internet, please go to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com. That is where all of our content lives. That's badgerfeed.com and honeybadgerradio.com. And also, lastly, I forgot to mention, send us a message at any point during the show. You can use the super chats if you're on YouTube. You can use Rumble Rants if you're watching on Rumble. But I would like to suggest that you use our system because it is the most beneficial for everybody involved. You can write longer messages. You don't have to worry about censorship. And you don't have to worry about companies taking a lot off the top like Google does for the super chat. So that's feedthebadger.com/just-the-tip for that. Okay. I've done all those things. Now let us get into today's stories. All right. So this one was brought to me by Mike J. I picked the story out, but he is the one who did the write-up for it. And I think it's worth pointing out because he did have a little bit of an add-on to this story that he says a lot of people did not talk about in the media. So first of all, after a short manhunt, Morgan Geyser has been arrested and her extradition back to Wisconsin is underway. Geyser, as some may remember, was one half of two Slender Man stabbers who attempted to kill a fellow female classmate in order to appease the fictional horror monster Slender Man that originated from a creepypasta on the website Something Awful. Geyser, I think her name is Geyser, Geyser. It could be Gazer, but I'm going to go with Geyser. Or Gozer. They're all bad, really, when you think about it. Geezer, yeah. Geezer.
Like a Londoner, you're a geezer.
It's probably pronounced geyser. That's where there are geysers here in Ohio. Not obviously not the land type, but that's actually worked for some.
Is that like a Pokemon? It's not a land type, it's more like a water type. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Geyser, the more involved of the two girls.
Wait till you hear the name of the other person of interest.
Yeah, right. Geyser, the more involved of the two girls in the crime, was given an initial sentence of 40 years in a mental institution but was granted conditional release earlier this year and was staying at a group home while being made to wear a court-mandated ankle monitor. It was during this time at the group home that Geyser began a friendship with Chad Mecca.
That's not a name. That's a meme. That's like the Virgin Jerusalem and the Chad Mecca.
It's literally spelled that way.
By a meme. Someone's having a laugh with this.
Chad Mecca. All right. So anyway, Mecca is nearly twice Geyser's age at 43 years old and calls himself Charlie. This is Chad Mecca, right? Girlfriend, I guess, calls himself Charlie, identifying as a male to female transgender. Mecca claims the two of them met at church and formed a deep bond. What kind of church was that? I don't know. Geyser allegedly confided in Mecca her desire to escape due to her fears of the group home not allowing Mecca to visit her. Mecca also believed that the group home was mistreating her. Eventually, Mecca was denied visitation with Geyser, but he continued meeting her in secret, climbing to her second-story window to do so. Mecca alleges that Geyser became emotionally distraught after he was forbidden from visiting her, claiming she said the following, quote, Geyser sobbed. She's like, they'll take away our visitation. Charlie, please, you're my best friend. And you know that before you showed up, I was ready to drink bleach and just all this stuff. And think of it, she already made it clear I didn't go, whether or not she was still going, and she was not going back to jail. And I know what that means, end quote. Shortly after, Mecca helped Geyser cut her ankle monitor and escape the group home. She was gone for over 12 hours before the home noticed and alerted the police. They were ultimately found and arrested a few days later, roughly 170 miles from the group home, just a few dozen miles south of Chicago. The two boarded a bus, but eventually continued to flee on foot. Soon after, Geyser injured her foot and the two attempted to camp out around a truck stop, but were contacted by the police for loitering. After being evasive, and you guys thought loitering is a silly crime to prosecute. After being evasive when asked for her name, Geyser eventually told the police everything and both her and Mecca were arrested. Mecca was booked on criminal trespass and obstruction, but was released in the morning. Meanwhile, Geyser has waived her extradition trial and is set to be returned to Wisconsin.
It's like Muhammad and the mountain, isn't it? If the geezer won't go to Mecca, then Mecca must go to the geezer.
Mike, you better get everything you're going to say out of the way, because I have a lot.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Because I'm...
Yeah, this is already a Netflix series in the making. It's already in the works. You know what it is. It's got everything. A mentally ill, poor little white girl who didn't do nothing, and a Looney Tune groomer who didn't do nothing, falling into a semi-demisexual, non-binary relationship or whatever the fuck it is, and going on the lam to escape from the evil patriarchy and getting into some wacky hijinks with it.
It's a modern-day Thelma and Louise.
Yeah. And yet they're going to get into wacky hijinks where they kill a bunch of evil white cisgendered men. I mean, they probably didn't in real life, but it's Netflix. Historical accuracy is not exactly a priority. They'll give us whatever white liberal college-educated women want to see. And what white liberal college-educated women want to see is white men getting erased and replaced and destroyed. Normally they do it by replacing male characters with uppity young girls and brave, hardened troons. But this time they don't even have to. Those are already the main characters. I mean, obviously, they'll have to make Morgan Geyser black. That goes without saying. And they'll have to make Chad Mecca, well, a Muslim. That's a trick they can't possibly miss. It's staring them right in the face. Do you reckon they'll get away with that? Making the troon a Muslim? It's making the white liberal college-educated girls weak at the knee just thinking about it. But I'm not sure how the Muslims would react. Is that the kind of representation they're looking for? It's okay. It's not like he became a trap to rebel against Islam. We all know Islam is perfectly tolerant when it comes to these things. It's not like he has to escape Islam. He's escaping the evil white patriarchy, and he's abducting a young white girl along the way. Oh, yeah, that might That might hit a little too close to home. Not because Muslims do that; they absolutely do not. But there's this rumor, this vicious, unfounded rumor going around that they do that. But hey, this is a perfect opportunity to tell a deep, compassionate story that debunks these harmful stereotypes. Just because he's a Muslim in this remake doesn't necessarily mean he was grooming this young lady. And just because he's a trap doesn't mean he was grooming this young lady. Watch us highlight how innocent and wholesome it is for a middle-aged trap to traffic a criminal girl across the country for no reason other than their perfectly normal, perfectly platonic relationship. It's a perfect opportunity to show these evil, cisgendered white men that this sort of thing doesn't happen all the time. And when it does, there's always a reasonable explanation for it. They're just friends, They're just friends traveling across the country to get away from it all and occasionally murdering people because, you got to break a few eggs. Like Bonnie and Clyde, like, as you said, like Thelma and Louise, like Lilo and Stitch, like SpongeBob and Patrick, like Bert and Ernie. Fun, nice, love, youth, beautiful. I'm all for it.
Oh boy. I'm not even sure where to start here. Like this is one of those this keeps on giving, right? This is going to turn into a female Christian. And yes, I just denied Chris Chan's chosen gender because I think he was manipulated into that by trolls. So let's start with the fact that I'm speaking in a somewhat professional capacity with regard to group homes, because I don't work in one all the time that has a large group, but I work with intellectually disabled adults. And while there's a difference, significant difference, in fact, between intellectual disability and mental health conditions and how they manifest, there's often a lot of overlap in the disabilities world. Physical disabilities, mental health conditions, and mental difficulties, like intellectual disabilities, often manifest in the same person after birth injuries occur and things like that, or due to genetics, or due to bad upbringing, or a combination thereof. And I think in this case there might be more than just mental health condition there. Upbringing is a major part of this. Main character syndrome is something that I think a rather large number of young American females and maybe young European females as well go through. In fact, I think I've seen it referred to in anime too, but not as main character syndrome, as like 8th grader syndrome, which basically you hit an age where you have to make the decision that playing pretend all the time and pretending that you're playing all the time is something real and tangible and solid, that if you do things in the real world guided by it and with the intent for them to go the way that your fantasy says they're going to go, that somehow they will. Like that hits at about 12 to 14 years in girls. And where boys, they get smacked in the face with reality. No, you are not Conan the Barbarian. No, you are not a real fireman, real police officer, real soldier, real whatever, insert superhero, fantasy character, job that grown-ups do here. And you can't just run around doing stuff like that. I think my brother was younger than that. I would have been 12, so he would have been 10 when we got to go see Ronald Reagan speak at the train depot in Lima. And it's because he was coming through on a train and he spoke from the train and then he left on the train. He never got off the train. So that's where the speech was done, because that's where he wasn't going into the community, which sometimes he did, because there was a tank plant there. There is, I think, still a tank plant there. I think Trump reopened it. But in any case, my brother wanted to play Secret Serviceman. And he really was very adamant that he wanted to bring his walkie-talkies and his toy guns, and he's a 10-year-old kid, and mom had to explain to him that you cannot even carry a pretend gun anywhere near the president of the United States, anywhere that Secret Service can see you, because then they might have to pay attention to you instead of somebody who might be dangerous. And this is a president, by the way, that somebody did shoot at, although I think at that point he hadn't been shot at yet. But given, and my brother was disappointed. Little boys like to play their games. They're going to be disappointed. But he had been raised as a boy to understand that just because you're disappointed doesn't mean that you have a right to do the thing you wanted to do and be accommodated, right? And I was raised the same way, not because of any boy-girl thing, but because that's just the way my family is. You get over it. You learn that not everything goes the way you want it to. Not everything that you think is going to be fun is something that you get to do. And not every pretend game that you play is something that you can just immerse yourself in all the time and never leave. In my family, I don't think we had a single kid who had a pretend friend for like more than 5 minutes, and not condemning families that encourage imagination in their kids, but there's a limit. And the development of this type of mental illness, this main character syndrome, 8th grader syndrome, whatever you want to call it, these delusional syndromes where the individual thinks something pretend is real to the degree that they act on it. The behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. They're at home with mom and dad, or just mom. And I don't remember in this case whether there was mom and dad or just mom. But they've got people around them that they have to either hide the behavior from, or that those people have to tolerate the behavior. And both indicate different problems. If you can behave this way this much and nobody knows it, that's a problem. But if you can behave this way this much and your parents are just like, oh, okay, well, that's her imagination, and, she's just running with it, big deal, okay. Both of those are bad, right? So this individual's in this setting, and that was a parental failure. That was the first failure that this girl experienced, this woman experienced, and that was during her childhood, right? So she goes to court, she gets that identified, that this is due to mental health conditions, that she needs to not just be locked up, but be locked up somewhere where she has to go through therapy and start to learn to differentiate between fantasy and reality, start to treat the symptoms of her mental health condition and cooperate with that treatment. And when she comes out of there, she's in what a lot of people think of as a halfway house, but a group home for people with her weaknesses, right? Your job as a worker in a home like that, it is to monitor the welfare and the condition, the mental and physical condition of the individual in the home. And there are things that we have to know about our residents in my end of that, where I'm working with people whose primary condition is intellectual disability, and they may have psychological disabilities as secondary conditions. They may have physical disabilities as secondary conditions, but their primary condition, their primary reason for being with my company is intellectual disability, right? One of the characteristics that we learn about a person under our care is whether or not they are a flight risk. A flight risk is somebody who might wander off. It doesn't even mean run away. It just means somebody who might leave and place themselves in an alone situation or a without support situation that they are not supposed to be in. Some people are in such a condition that under their care plan, they have no alone time aside from you maybe stepping out of the bathroom so they have privacy when they're doing their business, and you not being in the same room with them when they're sleeping. But aside from that, there are people that are under complete constant care. And if they were to, for instance, just open the door and go outside, that might be enough to classify them as a flight risk if they might do that without asking or talking to someone and asking, hey, come with me. So the people that worked with this gal should have had a similar designation on her. Like she should have, generally speaking, she'd have an individual service plan, similar to an individual education plan in a school system. They write down what the characteristics of the individual are, what the needs are for treatment, what the needs are for support, say a direct support professional that works with people with mental health conditions or intellectually disabled adults. What supports that individual needs in order to be safe, healthy, and have a day that doesn't go wrong every day. And that's it. So if she's managed to escape this, somebody probably wasn't doing their job properly. And at the same time, it's quite likely that if this individual that climbed into her house to get to her was able to get access to her repeatedly, somebody wasn't doing their job. I would know if somebody came in and interacted with one of my clients because I would be right there. They'd have to go right past me to get to them. And similarly, if I was working with someone like her, knowing her history, just the history that's been reported in the news, there's a level of vigilance that you're supposed to have. Now, why am I talking about all this? Because that job is primarily done by women. And I've noticed, like, there's a lot of things that happen in the news that occur with people with intellectual disabilities or mental health conditions that my company would go ballistic if one of us let that happen. We had one employee not long ago get into trouble, and the entire company has made like massive changes, and there's been a bunch of improvements, and we've all had to learn new things and answer for things, just like changes and so on. Not something I can get deeply into, but essentially, when something small were to happen, but when something big happens, they want to make sure it never happens again, because their whole goal in doing a job like this and having a company that does a job like this, or being a provider for the state in a job like this, is to prevent things like this from happening. And so I hope that there's a similar reckoning happening in the company that serves the individuals at this woman's group home. And the other aspect of this is, the reason that I'm talking about this is, like I said, there's a significant difference between how boys are treated when they try to make their real life all about their fantasies at that age, versus how girls are treated, right? And it's it's recognized that boys should grow up at that point. It isn't always recognized that girls need to grow up at that point. And so that kind of behavior is more tolerated. People think it's cute, and it's not. And people act like it's harmless, and clearly it's not. Considering that she and the gal she was engaging in the behavior with tried to kill someone. And then the last bit of this obviously is the troon that is pursuing her, the troon that is preying on her, is someone that is clearly not a real trans individual, but a woke ideological nutbag who has identified being trans as something that you can use as a shield against all forms of criticism. Identified that because being female gets treated as a shield that you can use against all forms of criticism until you try to kill somebody or until you kidnap and run away with somebody who has a mental health condition. And therefore, you're suddenly able to be recognized as dangerous because there were consequences that other people can't ignore. I think that kind of behavior, that I will disguise myself as a trans woman so that I can have access to potential victims, that behavior will end the day that it becomes a non-issue to criticize behavior, even if somebody is female, even if somebody identifies as female, even if somebody is in a minority group, even if that minority group is tiny, and even if that minority group has historical victimhood from having been discriminated against and wrongly treated as predators when they weren't. Right? We still have to be able to recognize that it is predatory for someone to do something like that, no matter who they are, no matter what demographic they came from, no matter what some other people in the past did to some other people in the past. This person standing before you right now did something harmful to another person. That's the factor that you should be addressing. And it does not matter who they are. It does not matter what excuses they make for it. If they did it on purpose and they knew, because when you sneak into somebody's house, that is a clear indicator that you know what you're doing is wrong. You don't have to sneak around to do something that is okay. So they knew that it was unacceptable. They knew that it was wrong. They knew, right? He knew that he was kidnapping a mentally ill woman and running off with her. That's something that we should be able to criticize without caring whether he identifies publicly as female, calls himself trans, dyes his hair green, wears a dress, and plays victim when you start criticizing the behavior. I don't care. I don't care who you are. Don't commit crimes. Don't victimize somebody. And similarly, this girl, I don't care who you are. Being female doesn't give you the excuse to try to kill your friend. Doesn't give you the excuse to live in a fantasy world. And parents shouldn't be allowing their children to go down that rabbit hole. I mean, for fuck's sake, Slender Man started out as a joke. It was a gag on the internet. Like, it wasn't just a creepypasta. Before it was a creepypasta, it was a joke item made in a Photoshop battle. I don't even know how to stress how insane it is to create a reality, to turn that into your own personal psychological tulpa and do what she did. Right? If your parents are allowing you to do stuff like that, if you're in your 20s and you think you're secretly from another universe, or being pursued by some creepypasta monster. Like if you think the siren thingy is after you, or you know that there's a skinwalker outside of your house in New Jersey, go get help. Your parents are not doing you any favors by allowing that, and you should stop it. You should put a stop to it. Anybody that's associated with you that is feeding into it, you should stop hanging out with those people, because you're being harmed, and you're harming yourself, and you're going to end up doing something stupid like this. The final thing that I will say about this is the thing that I really just cannot get over is just the fact that all of this, people talking about this on the internet are probably going to ignore most of the factors that I just brought up. And it is going to be fodder for, this girl is going to be treated like a lol cow. The individual who took her is going to be treated like a lol cow. And if there's a reckoning in whatever organization runs the home that she escaped from, nobody will know about it. And probably other homes and other organizations won't even have a response. They won't do any self-examination. They won't have any concern that, gosh, could this happen to us, right? And they won't change anything, because if companies were doing that, the Chris Chan incidents would have led to some examination that might have prevented this from happening. Right? So, sadly, my bottom line on this is, don't let teenage girls be kids longer than you let teenage boys be kids, because you end up with adult women who are kids, and they can be dangerous. And don't let somebody's demographic association with some sort of historical victimhood be a shield against criticism for behavior that is dangerous, destructive, and potentially criminal. And you won't have problems like this.
Yeah. I can't wait for the Netflix adaptation of this, starring Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. So, that's probably going to win all the awards. I got a super chow from Richard Bier, who gives us $5 and says, there was that one after-school special, Mazes and Monsters, that touched on something like this. It also caused a panic about role-playing games. Was that an after-school special? I could have sworn that was like a movie. Yeah, Tom Hanks movie. Yeah.
Yes, I had something to say about that too.
All right, go ahead.
Right. So, Mazes and Monsters claimed to be based on a true story. It wasn't. And I did a research paper on this because of my parents' response to that movie. And also there was a pamphlet. It was kind of in the vein of chick publications, but it wasn't in the style of chick publications. That the title of it was something like "Parents Don't Let Your Kids Play Dungeons and Dragons" or something like that. And both of these things fail to differentiate between an individual who sits in a room with other friends and rolls dice and uses rule books and plays out a story and then goes home and is not still stuck in the story, and doesn't obsessively do that when they're supposed to be doing other things like homework or going to their job or taking a shower. But people who never stop fantasizing, right? What I learned when I did my research on this, to prove to my parents that it was not dangerous to me to play this game, was that there have been incidents where bad things have happened and people have associated the bad things with Dungeons and Dragons. But in every instance, there was another factor. One kid committed suicide. He had surrounded himself with elements of darkness. Like he was all into symbols of Satanism and everything. And he had made false associations between types of music and Satanism, and the games he was playing and Satanism. He was using drugs, and he had a mental health condition that often blurs the lines between fantasy and reality. And in fact, can actually make your perceptions difficult for your brain to analyze. And he committed suicide, and there were some indications that he thought a monster was after him, right? But it wasn't a D&D monster. And there were not actual indications that this was set off by this game, or that the game contributed in any way, when there were serious indications that the mental illness did, and that the drugs he was using exacerbated the problem, and that he didn't get any help from anybody in pulling himself out of that, or getting treatment to prevent that. And so he ended up, as a statistic, a lot of suicide in that particular mental health condition. There were several other cases where things occurred, crimes occurred, injuries occurred. There was violence, and there were failures to launch and things like that. That in each instance, the individual had a drug problem or a reality bending mental health condition that wasn't properly being handled, and the individual was not properly being supervised by their parents, and the game was marginal in terms of their life. Like, it wasn't the main thing they were doing. It wasn't the main thing related to the cause of the issue, the outcome that they had. Each time, parents were using, let's blame this game, as a means of avoiding finding out, gosh, where did we fail our kid? And in most of those cases, the individual was male. And so all of the history of Dungeons and Dragons causes people to go crazy and forget that they're not in the middle of a fantasy role-playing game all the time and so on. No, it's bullshit. Just like television doesn't cause kids to become violent. Violence on television doesn't cause kids to become violent. Violence in video games doesn't cause kids to become violent. Violence in the home does. Right? But violence on video games and television does not. Rock and roll music and heavy metal music do not cause kids to become satanic. And a lot of people that are associating most of this music with Satanism are misinterpreting a lot of stuff in the music, not just a little bit, but to the degree that their interpretation is 180 degrees wrong from the original meaning of the music they're interpreting. So there's a shit ton of this, and it's always been this way. Parents don't like to admit when they've made a mistake, right? They didn't do something for their child that they should have done, and the child had a consequence that they shouldn't have had to face, or they did something thinking it was the best thing they could do for their child, and the child had an adverse consequence from the thing that mom and dad did. So they blame anything and everything other than, I should have gotten my kid help, or I should not have trusted the doctor that only gave my child pills and didn't try any type of behavioral modification therapy. I believed the first thing I heard and had part of my child's flesh amputated, thinking that it would prevent something that the child is still vulnerable to, but now thinks he's not and is going to take higher risks, and and so on. And as a result, again, you end up with situations like this, like we're discussing here, and at no point will anybody turn around and suggest that perhaps parents should have been more involved? And maybe they weren't as involved as they should have been. Maybe they weren't as knowledgeable as they should have been. Maybe they weren't as hard on the kid as they should have been.
All right. Thank you for those thoughts. I also got a super chat from Meredith G, who gives us $5 and says HBR News number 529, honey for the Badgers. Thank you, Meredith. Really appreciate it. Okay. Let's get into the next story, but let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. Yes, these things get pretty wild. All right. We got to talk about this. So, on November 26th, just blocks from the White House in downtown Washington, D.C., 29-year-old Afghan national, I apologize if I butcher this pronunciation, Ramanullah Lakanwal, allegedly carried out, an ambush-style shooting targeting two uniformed members of the West Virginia National Guard. Lakanwal, who had driven thousands of miles cross-country from his home in Bellingham, Washington, that's Washington State, so Washington State to Washington, D.C., opened fire around 2:15 p.m., killing 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom with multiple gunshot wounds and critically injuring 24-year-old Andrew Wolf, who was shot several times. One of the guardsmen returned fire, striking Lakanwal in the process. The attack unfolded on the eve of Thanksgiving, prompting an immediate response from the Secret Service Metropolitan Police and FBI, who secured the scene amid heightened security in the nation's capital. Lakanwal, a married father of 5 who had resettled in the U.S. in 2021 through Operation Allies Welcome, yes, that Allies Welcome operation that basically allowed a bunch of foreign nationals in. After serving over a decade in a CIA-backed Afghan Special Forces Zero unit, hunting Taliban commanders have been apparently, or at least allegedly, grappling with severe mental health challenges since arriving. Despite extensive vetting during his military service and a successful asylum application granted in 2025, he struggled with cultural isolation, poor English skills, PTSD, and manic episodes, often isolating himself for weeks in dark rooms or embarking on erratic cross-country drives while unable to maintain employment. Caseworkers noted his deepening crisis and lack of ongoing refugee support, though authorities have not confirmed any specific motive and are investigating potential radicalization ties. Lakanwal remains hospitalized and faces charges including first-degree murder. It's also worth pointing out, he did shout Allahu Akbar as he was shooting at the National Guardsmen. It proves nothing, yeah. Purely just, maybe I didn't hear that. Maybe it was something else. But that's what they're saying. The bigots are saying that. So, anyway, this is I don't know if the other guy's recovered yet. He's in critical condition, I believe. So, I don't know if he's expected to pull through. But the other one was, in fact, killed. So, anyway, I leave you guys the floor.
What we've learned from this, among other things, is that war is not always simply a case of good versus evil. It's not even a case of one side versus another. It's a polygon. It's a dodecahedron. It's a Rubik's cube of sides. What we have here is a man who fought against the Taliban, and so it's generally assumed that he's on our side. But yeah, no. Welcome to your rude awakening. The enemy of your enemy is not necessarily your friend, nor is the enemy of your enemy necessarily your enemy, but they probably are. You should probably assume by default that any given Afghanistani is probably your enemy in potentia, if nothing else. In fact, you should probably consider the average world citizen as your enemy, just to be safe. That doesn't mean you should shoot them. It just means you probably shouldn't give them a gun, lest they shoot you. Can we perhaps float the notion that the Taliban is what we call right-wing? We would have to break down what that means. It doesn't mean white supremacist Christian, contrary to popular belief. Far from it in the case of the Taliban. But they do seem to be conservative along their own lines. They're in favor of modesty, even to a fault, and patriotism, even to a fault, and religious adherence, even to a fault. So someone who fights against the Taliban is not necessarily on the side of the West. They might just be on the side of what we call the left wing. They want immodesty and global equality and religious nullification, even to a fault in the case of all of the above. So if you take them out of Afghanistan and put them in the United States, what do you suppose they would do? They would look around them and think, okay, here I am doing what I do. What is the American equivalent of the Taliban that I was fighting against just now? Aha! I see you too have a right wing. You have police forces that are here to conserve some kind of status quo. Let me just turn on the TV for a second. Aha! According to CNN and CBS and ABC and fucking NBC, the ordinary American people in charge of these networks also feel like their authorities are overly conservative to a fault. As a matter of fact, they feel oppressed by nationalism and religiosity and modesty. Well, I know what I must do. They must have brought me here for a reason, after all. So, you see what I mean? As reductive as this left/right description may be, it doesn't matter which Afghanis you're bringing into the country. Their right wing will hate your country because it's not their country, and their left wing will hate your country because it's a country. It's in their nature to bring down the authorities of whatever country they happen to be occupying. And that I can understand. I get where they're coming from. I have something of a problem with authority myself. But the thing about lefties is they have no concept of left-wing authorities. They assume that whoever's in charge must be right-wing, no matter how left-wing they in fact are. So when they turn on the TV and they listen to these alphabet networks brazenly inciting violence against the police and the president, they think, oh man, look at these brave freedom fighters on the TV pushing back against the evil empire. I should join them in their struggle. It never occurs to them that what they're watching on that TV is the evil empire doing whatever it can to propagandize everyone against the American people and against their interests. And you can see why it's so confusing. Surely the people in power, the people in charge of the media, don't hate their own countrymen. Surely the mass media wouldn't be biased against the people they're supposed to be serving. That doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't. And it doesn't happen in the East or in the Middle East or in Africa, at least not until they get hit by the communism. Most countries by default, and their governments and their media, tend to be preoccupied with the interests of their own country and their own people. It's mostly in the West where these communication networks are under the stranglehold of pathological oikophobes, whose modus operandi is to undermine and demoralize their own country and its people. Yes, folks, I am once again blaming the media for everything. We're not quite sure what this fella's motives were, but in the meantime, we can notice the media's response to this tragedy. They didn't self-reflect. They didn't question their own motives. They didn't think, maybe this defund the police narrative of ours isn't helping. Maybe our constant lenience in favor of foreign criminals might be contributing to the rise in crimes committed by foreign criminals. Nope, none of that. It was just, this is Trump's fault. If the evil orange man hadn't put those police officers there in the first place, they wouldn't have been shot. Yeah, they didn't think for a moment, if Biden hadn't brought this criminal into the country in the first place, he wouldn't have shot those police officers. No, It's not the fault of the foreign criminals. It's the fault of whoever is trying to protect the general public from the criminals. Well, what it boils down to is it's not the fault of the Democrats ever. It's the fault of the Republicans forever and always. And it's because the Republicans are the party of America first, and the Democrats are the party of America last. Well, the Republicans are the party of Israel first and America second, but that's still far too patriotic as far as the Democrats are concerned. As far as they're concerned, it's got to be America coming 193rd out of 193, because that's what they call progressive. I feel like I say this every week, but it's true. You could deport all the Afghanis, all the Somalians or whatever. You could send every third worlder back to the third world and never let them back in again. But you will still continue to get overrun with domestically grown violent psychopaths trying to kill your country one citizen at a time because the media is telling them to. And I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to stop the George Soroses of the world from twisting everyone's arm. I don't know how you rid the education system of all these psychotic communists. All I can say is turn off the TV, people. Tell your friends and family to turn off the TV. It is a box of black magic that hates you, and it absolutely will not stop ever until you are dead. But you can render it powerless if you simply turn it off and never again tune in to those alphabet networks. You don't have to throw away your TV. Just don't tune into the stations. Just run your PlayStation through it and have a good time. You'll find far more salvation and solidarity if you tune that shit out and let those UHF waves pass harmlessly through you like neutrinos. By the way, I am a doctor of randomers on cameras, and this is expert advice. Do with it as you will.
So there was one specific thing that I'm going to latch onto in this story because it really stuck out to me like a sore thumb. And it's funny. It sort of took me back to being a little kid. One of the books I read when I was in early elementary school, I want to say, I think it came out. It might have been later than that. So I'm thinking maybe I was in junior high when I read it. But in any case, this story was called "Hello, My Name is Scrambled Eggs." Probably if you were a kid growing up during Generation X era, you ran into this book or had this book recommended to you. And it was about a refugee kid from Vietnam after the Vietnam War, being integrated into this family, and his community, and the hijinks that ensued. They sort of used humor to humanize the situation of how different the culture and circumstances he was coming from were from the culture and circumstances he was going into. And one of the things that stuck with me about that was the support systems needed for refugees coming from hellacious situations in foreign countries with dramatically different cultures from our own, to stay here for their own safety, and then trying to assimilate themselves in, at least to the degree that they can be part of their local communities that they're going to be in here, because they may be here for the rest of their lives. Things may never settle down in their home country. You never know, right? So this one part of this paragraph, he struggled with cultural isolation, poor English skills, PTSD, and manic episodes, often isolating himself for weeks in dark rooms or embarking on erratic cross-country drives while unable to maintain employment. Caseworkers noted his deepening crisis and lack of ongoing refugee support. Now, why, after decades of having systems in place to support refugees from foreign wars, do we suddenly have this lack of support? What has changed during, say, the last 10 years that would cause that? Oh, that's right. The United States has been flooded with illegal immigrants making false claims of refugee status on top of our actual refugee immigrants coming in who actually deserve and need our assistance. And so now all of these systems that are in place to handle the smaller number of people in the world who have these issues, who have come from war-torn areas where they are in danger for political reasons. The people they were fighting against would kill them. Maybe they would be killed for their religious views. Maybe they would be killed for having helped the United States with something. Like, there's not a prioritization of their needs. And we used to have a very narrow, like, we help people if we created the situation in their country by going in and going to war in their country. The refugees that came here from Vietnam came here with soldiers coming home as part of an evacuation because of what we did in their country. And the refugees from Afghanistan, that was the same situation, right? The refugees, supposed refugees, the massive number of people coming up from South America claiming to be refugees, that most of which were not, they didn't come here necessarily because the United States gave them problems in their country to flee, right? They came here to bring those problems to us, where their nations have been taken over by communist leaders or socialist leaders as a result of maybe manipulation by the U.S. government, maybe not, maybe manipulation in their own country by their own people. And many of them came here to bring communism, not to escape it, not to escape a war environment or a political environment created by U.S. interference in their country, not to flee religious prosecution or persecution, but, as we were told, to have a better life. And of course, these systems weren't grown, they weren't increased. In fact, they were so overwhelmed that they lost like 300,000 kids or something. Some unacceptable number. One is an unacceptable number. This was like the kind of unacceptable number that when you hear it, your jaw drops and you yell, "What the fuck?" by the Biden administration. Just kids that were just misplaced in the system. We don't know where they are. And we have found some of them now that Biden's out of office, but not all of them. And we'll probably never find all of them. We might find out that terrible things happened to some of them, and we won't find the children because they're gone. And that's the reality of it. So these systems have been overtaxed, overwhelmed, and underfunded. And now we're in a situation where they can't differentiate between somebody they should be paying closer attention to and somebody who's just having a rough time. They should have paid very careful attention to this man. This man should have been brought in for help and for examination for this radicalization that they're concerned about now. Instead, he was left to do what he ended up doing, and now we're here talking about the potential causes. The causes are people decided that the United States should take on all of the world's problems and then didn't create systems capable of doing that. And now that those people are out of office, the current administration is trying to hold the bag, and it's too heavy. And people like this guy are falling through it. This is probably not the last time we're going to see something like this. And you should be prepared to recognize that you can't just blame whoever's in office right now, that this is a multi-administration problem. This goes back to Obama and probably before, although Obama's the one that really started letting people in. Unfortunately, I don't think that what we have in place now is prepared to prevent future incidents like this just yet. So 2 young people died. 2 young people that probably signed up for service to pay for college died because of this.
Yeah,
And
I know
that's the
guys
other
in the National Guard. When I was going to college, they were using it to help pay for the tuition.
Yeah, I've had several friends in the National Guard, during my university.
And they were immigrants too.
Yeah,
the guys I knew.
Some of them were. Yeah. And they didn't sign up just because they wanted to be in the military. They signed up because the ads basically said primarily, you can get paid while you're going to school. We will pay for your college tuition, and you get, this much money. And in some instances, it can pay, if you're going to a community college, it can pay for your tuition and your housing and everything. And then you'll come out of it with skills that will help you get a job in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it's heavily marketed like that. And it has been for decades. And it's not false, but it's not marketed with the other end of the story. You're going to risk your life as part of your job when you join any branch of the military, even the part-time branch.
Yeah.
Right. Even, and there, I think there are full-timers in the National Guard too. But it's still considered like the easiest, the least risky, and so on out of all the branches. It's like the polar opposite of the Marines. But I think most of us that haven't done any kind of military service have to acknowledge that they are still soldiers, and that they are still risking their lives, and that they are still at risk of being targeted in incidents like this.
Yeah.
But usually you don't expect it to come from people in your own country that your government supposedly vetted, for being here. It's supposed to be, well, you get activated and you get stationed somewhere, and then you're at risk after you've had all your training, and everybody that's around you is at the same risk, and in the moment that you're at risk, as opposed to at that level of risk, as opposed to having it come out of nowhere like this.
Yeah.
So the whole thing, all around, it's a tragedy. But
sure.
It has to be put right at the feet of woke politicians
Mm-hmm.
that acted like the U.S. could just be the problem solver for the entire world, and that it's all good if we just take everybody from the entire world into our country and treat them all as refugees, but don't create a system capable. We probably can't create a system capable of handling that level and scope of refugee status.
Yeah. Yeah, and and the people who voted for it, and because they were part of this too, and I don't know if anyone's gonna have a moment of clarity with that. It's like the one thing that we need is a little bit of humility, and then is anyone gonna? Well, look, I'll leave it to you guys because we got to move on to the next story. We still got 2 more things to get to, but I just want to throw in there This guy served over a decade in a CIA-backed Afghan
Yep.
Special Forces Zero unit. CIA-backed.
CIA being the operative word there.
CIA is
Operative being
definitely
an
the operative
operative word.
acronym.
Operative word
it was,
there,
and then
yeah.
all of a sudden he was having like PTSD episodes.
Well, I don't
Pressing
think the
X to doubt. I don't
PTSD
know.
was the
No,
sudden
but
thing. I think
they
the
did claim.
radicalization was the sudden thing.
Yeah, but they're claiming that he struggled with this stuff.
Oh yeah, he did. I'm sure
But
he
like
probably
if we're
did.
getting, but who are we getting this information from? Are
Well,
we
here's
getting
the
it
thing.
from the CIA? Because that's
Here's
the
the
thing.
thing.
Like the CIA have
Brian,
investigated
here,
themselves and
listen
they
to
have
me for a
found
minute.
themselves innocent.
If you're
Yes.
going to target somebody to do something bad, and
Yeah.
you're going to exploit them for fodder for like what, gun control or some other issue, like maybe you're
Sure.
trying to support border patrol or
Immigration is
whatever.
the thing
Use
right
it,
now.
insert issue here, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to use somebody for a psyop, do you pick somebody who is mentally healthy, stable, highly intelligent, has no background issues, no stress issues, no anything like that going on? Or do you like, whoa, this guy's got PTSD, he's having manic episodes, he's suffering from extreme stress, he's having difficulty assimilating into the local culture, he's isolating himself in the dark and behaving strangely, he can't keep a job, like maybe this might be the perfect guy. Of course those issues might be, I don't think those issues are fake. I think those issues are the reason that he's targeted for a psyop. If this is a psyop, which is quite clearly could be. Anytime the CIA is even remotely involved, there's a chance, and the closer their involvement, the greater the chance that this is a fucking psyop, right? So they had
Sure.
direct involvement with this guy, and that chance exists. But if you look at all other news reports about individuals who have been radicalized by FBI agents or CIA agents, who were just trying to catch them in a crime that they were totally going to do before they got radicalized by the agents, that it's always somebody with like schizophrenia or PTSD, bipolar disorder, antisocial personality disorder. It's never, Joe Schmo, ordinary person, mentally healthy, stable, goes to church every Sunday, hangs out with a peer group that would notice if something was off, and so on and so, has both parents at home. It's always somebody like this. So yeah, it's not surprising at all. But again, that's like one branch of the government. And a lot of these situations, you have this one branch of the government doing, they are not branch, but department. CIA is an agency within a department. And that department is doing those things. But the department that handles support for refugees is a different department, different agency, different people. They still had a chance to spot this if they weren't overwhelmed by wrongful import of people who aren't really refugees and labeling them refugees. They still had a chance to spot this coming and do something about it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that overwhelming. So both issues are a problem. We there has to be some reining in of the CIA and the entire spy end of the Defense Department, where they're not attacking the stability of the United States anymore. That has to change so that they're not doing that anymore. But at the same time, the issue of overwhelming false refugee status and overwhelming these other systems, these support systems, that has to be addressed too. And this situation is the perfect storm of both of those.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, yeah. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. It's definitely like still fresh in people's minds, and if we learn anything, we'll probably like follow up with whatever information we get. But a lot of questions, and I guess we'll see. And my thoughts go out to the survivors of the the murdered victim, and I hope the other guy recovers. I don't really know where his status is at right now. But we'll see. So we'll follow up with that. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. All right, we're going to get a little international. We're going to talk about Italy. So on November 25th, coinciding with the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, you think we got it bad in America, Italy's lower house of parliament, the Chamber of Deputies, unanimously approved a groundbreaking law that formally introduces femicide, defined as the gender-motivated murder of a woman or girl, into the country's criminal code. The legislation, supported across the political spectrum, including by Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's right-wing government, classifies femicide as a distinct aggravated form of homicide, punishable by life imprisonment, the maximum penalty under Italian law. This move addresses a persistent crisis, with Italy's National Institute of Statistics reporting 106 femicides in 2024 alone, nearly 60% committed by intimate partners or ex-partners. The law's passage was spurred by widespread outrage over high-profile cases, notably the 2023 stabbing death of a 22-year-old university student, Giulia Cecchettin, hopefully I'm not butchering that, I'm sure I am, by her ex-boyfriend, which ignited nationwide protests and demands for stronger protections against patriarchal violence. They literally framed it as patriarchal violence. While hailed as a symbolic step towards eradicating gender-based killings, allowing for better tracking, study, and prosecution of such crimes, critics from the center-left opposition and women's rights advocates argue it falls short, so it's not good enough, apparently, by focusing primarily on punishment rather than prevention, education, or addressing socioeconomic factors like cultural isolation and economic inequality that fuel domestic abuse. Why don't we have some more communism in Italy? That'll address the problem, said the leftist women. Despite these concerns, the unanimous vote marked a rare moment of bipartisan unity in Italy's polarized parliament, with Meloni describing it as a sign of political cohesion against the barbaric nature of violence against women. And this picture is of protesters or activists sort of in Italy celebrating, or, this, I guess, the day, what is the national, this is in Italy, the international for the elimination of violence against women.
Some of you might be thinking, right-wing government, my arse. This is what Stefan Molyneux called socialism in panties, aka feminism. But this is where I regret to inform you that this problem transcends such trifling matters as left versus right. A right-wing government is no less susceptible to this bullshit than a left-wing government, or a centrist one, or even a libertarian or authoritarian one. A libertarian can liberate women while completely neglecting to liberate men. An authoritarian can persecute men while completely neglecting to persecute women. The entire political spectrum in its childish two-dimensional rendering can be and is awash with this two-tier feminist dogma. That's largely why I'm so fatigued with the whole thing, and I always have been. While everyone's arguing about left versus right, and even about liberty versus authority, we all keep getting pushed down this other dimensional axis that no one is even seeing, infantilizing women at the expense of men. Yeah, no, that's not left or right or libertarian or authoritarian. It's this whole other axis. And that is what is destroying your civilization. Whether you are any European country, and whether you are Russia or China or Afghanistan or America, but especially if you are in Europe. I have to wonder if it's a coincidence that femicide became law first in Spain and then in Italy. It's the same pattern we saw happening with the political phenomenon we call fascism. That too happened in Spain and then Italy. It's hard to pin down what the fuck that shit even means anymore, fascism, but we can perhaps build up a picture of it if we observe what's happening in the modern day. Shall we say, in a fascist country, the life of someone within the state is worth more than the life of someone outside of the state. And in a feminist country, the life of a woman is worth more than the life of a man. And that is what we're seeing all over the fucking place. This isn't a recent phenomenon, of course. Ever since the rise of romantic chivalry, men have been expected to sacrifice themselves for women. And even before that, it's a rule that tends to push on an open door because, by and large, men love women. Kind of too much, if you ask me. Way more than women love men. But the politicization of romantic chivalry is a relatively recent phenomenon, one that did come to pass in parallel with communism, the politicization of class envy. It's when it's not enough that men voluntarily sacrifice themselves for women. It's when they are compelled to sacrifice themselves for women by force. And when even that is not good enough, we get this shit. When a man kills a woman, he is treated like a mass murderer. But when a woman kills a man, she is not even charged with murder. She gets off scot-free because of temporary insanity, because of hormones, because she was afraid, or because she was understandably unsatisfied with some situation or another. Any excuse that can be made. And she doesn't go to prison anyway because it's barbaric and inhuman to put women in prisons. I mean, all they did was kill a child. If we imprisoned every woman who elected to exact the death of a child, we would have to build millions of prisons. So we'll just have to presume that children are not human beings and neither are men. By the way, you can see what they're doing by citing the statistic that 60% of murdered women are murdered by intimate partners. Men are killed by all kinds of people because men encounter all kinds of people as they venture into the outside world to try and hunt and forage to feed their families. Women don't tend to get killed by randos quite as much because they don't encounter all that many randos. That's why they are killed so much less frequently, and that's why what's left over is the only people they do frequently encounter, their intimate partners. And the feminists of the world look at this and they think, well, this just proves that the most dangerous person in a woman's life is her intimate partner. And why would her intimate partner kill her? What reason could a husband or boyfriend possibly have for killing his wife or girlfriend other than just because she's a woman? And I'm like, it's relatively common for men and women to kill their intimate partners. And given that most people are heterosexual, the vast majority of these murders are going to be man versus woman in one direction or the other. It's not that men kill women more than women kill men. It's that men get killed more by more kinds of people and for more reasons. It's not that men kill women because they're women. It's that people kill their intimate partners and women tend to be the intimate partners of men. Is any of this computing, people? No. No, it is not. And it never will. It doesn't matter how much freedom and privilege we give to women. Feminists will always look at whatever is killing women the most, and they will crack down on whatever that thing is. We could keep every woman in hospital for their entire lives, and feminists would go, look, 100% of women are dying in hospital. It must be the hospitals that are killing them just because they're women. And they'd still find a way to blame men for it. even if the hospitals are staffed entirely by women, which they increasingly are, by the way. We could force women to wear trash bags and force men to chaperone them everywhere they go, and it will still never occur to people that maybe we're protecting women too much. They'll keep demanding that we protect women even more. We could put every woman in a bubble and people will still blame men rather than blaming the insane feminists who are forcing women to live in a bubble. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are doing at this point. Metaphorically, of course. Women live in bubbles, completely separated from the consequences of their actions. This drives them insane. But all we can do is blame men for their insanity while we continue to make the bubbles smaller and smaller. Sick of it. Absolutely fucking sick of it. Stop it. Get some help. Ugh.
It's actually insanely dangerous for both sexes. And I tend to use AI now instead of a calculator when crunching these types of numbers, because AI adds thoughts to, ideas that I might consider to the number crunching. And so I did that a while back in a discussion where somebody, brought up the statistic on what percentage of female murder victims are killed by an intimate partner. And the first thing that Grok pointed out to me is that the claim is based not on a statistic that counts intimate partner murders, but on a statistic that counts family violence that ends with murder. So if the family member is a sibling, a parent, the child of the victim, an aunt or uncle, cousin, niece or nephew that lives in the home with the individual, which there are countries in which extended families do still all live together, that's counted as well as the counting of the intimate partner. And then also the statistic on which the 60% number is based does not actually differentiate between women killed by a male intimate partner and women killed by a female intimate partner. In previous calculations I've had it do, Grok came back with the answer that less than 0.1% of the world population is responsible for all violent crimes. And that includes criminal violence around theft, burglary, and things like that, criminal violence around sexual violence, intimate partner violence, random murders and attacks, mugging, etc. So not just that one thing. Less than 0.1% of the overall population when you put all of those crimes together. So it's an even smaller percentage, and that's the adult population, or the population that can be charged as adults, so people over the age of about 15. And when you narrow the scope down to family violence, and specifically to murder perpetrated in the context of family violence, it becomes significantly smaller, because that is actually a minority among types of violent crime. There are significantly more murders that occur in the scope of burglary, gang rivalries, people trying to attack somebody because of a conflict in a bar, things like that. And very few murders are actually committed because the person is the partner of the perpetrator, or because of some related conflict within the family, and it's an act of family violence. So we're talking tiny percentage of the population. Meanwhile, statistically, worldwide, men are 80% of homicide victims, right? So when I had Grok go through and account for all of the factors involved in determining, this family violence, since we couldn't narrow it down to partner violence, the crime that affects 80 or 60% of female homicide victims, 44% of the victims of that particular crime, 44.4% of the victims of that particular type of crime are male. So women are a slight majority, 55.6%, but not an extreme majority. They're not 80% of family homicide victims or even 60% of family homicide victims. And this is, again, a tiny percentage of the population of perpetrators of violent crime. So this is how feminists twist their numbers, right? Like Mike said, it's they're ignoring the majority of categories of homicide and violence in order to narrow the scope to just this one, because it's the only one left that looks like it affects a significant number of women. But in reality, it's a minority among homicide victims. And within that minority of homicide victims, feminists are only a bare majority, not like the only people that are affected. And there are perpetrators that are female. And some of those female perpetrators kill female partners or female family members. Right? The other interesting thing about this, you have this idea that violence against specifically women, like if a woman is the target of violence, it must be because she's a woman. And again, Mike kind of killed that. That doesn't necessarily mean that. It does not follow. It's a non sequitur to just make that assumption. So jumping to a conclusion, right? In the context of these types of murders, many people who are murdered by a partner are murdered for insurance money. Many people who are murdered by a partner are murdered because there's a conflict over custody of the children in a divorce. Many people who are murdered by a partner are murdered over other financial issues or in a jealous rage because there was cheating involved, or because the murderer wants to cheat with impunity and has gotten caught, or some other form of accountability has occurred that the murderer is trying to dodge, and the murderer gets caught. Generally speaking, the gender of the victim is the least determining factor, and the greatest determining factor is some conflict or a condition or situation that the murderer thinks they can solve by eliminating the victim, and that's why they attempt to commit that murder. It has nothing to do with domination. It has nothing to do with trying to maintain a patriarchy. It has nothing to do with what sex the victim is. It has everything to do with the factors that humans kill each other for in any other instance. And with regard to violence against women, the problem is so small in the world that they are scrambling for new types of things to define as violence against women. And now we are hearing terms like online gender-based violence, in which if I'm in an argument with Queen Femitopia, Princess Femitopia, Princess Butthurt of the nation of Femitopia. How's that? That's, she has things to say and I have things to say and we don't like what each other has to say. If someone in the conversation with us, anyone in the conversation with us, calls her a bitch or suggests that she's going to get herself injured by making stupid choices and making herself vulnerable to predators, or any such stupid, idiotic, this is not violence, right? But categorization of violence. This is the things that Anita Sarkeesian raised her almost $500,000 complaining about. They won't count if somebody tells me that I should get raped so that I would know what it was like, which somebody did during the Gamergate controversy, say to me, oh, you should get raped so you would know what it's like. Notwithstanding the fact that I know what it's like, or the fact that this individual was a feminist and therefore believed that she had a 1 in 4 chance that she was talking to somebody that had been raped. Yeah, it's violence now. Your words are violence now. If you say something rude or mean that references violence, and the person you're talking to is a woman on the right side of the political fence, the feminist side of the political fence. If we're on the wrong side of the political fence, if we're supporters of the consumer revolt during the Gamergate controversy, if we are supporters of any conservative cause, any ANCAP cause, any libertarian cause, anything in between, we don't count. And you can threaten to come to our house and beat our asses, and it's not online gender-based violence. But if you call the women that we're arguing with bitches or idiots or accidents waiting to happen, that's online gender-based violence now, right? That's violence. Words that they can shut off, words that they don't have to see it. They can mute you. They can close the computer. They can leave the conversation. They can block you. And if you say something that they deem scary enough that they feel their life is in danger, or even if it just causes them substantial emotional distress, and you're in the United States and they're in the United States, they can have you arrested for stalking and harassment using an electronic device. But no, the UN women right now are trying to get international law passed that will influence national law in various countries to create new criminal statutes to criminalize so-called online gender-based violence. So if you say, shut the fuck up, get back in the kitchen, bitch, online as a joke, a woman could treat that the same as if you said on Wednesday next, I am going to come to your house with a big knife, break in through your back door, and come into your bedroom at night and kill you. Right? Same difference, right? Shut the fuck up, bitch. Get back in the kitchen. Oh, I'm going to do this specific crime to you on this specific date at this specific time with this specific weapon in this specific location. They won't differentiate. So obviously, there is not enough real world violence against women for them to deal with, and they have to make shit up like this as a new type of violence, a brand new thing for them to deal with, because they are running out of the problem that they had been capitalizing on. And at the same time, there's a solution that I can offer them in terms of violence against women. Statistics show that in intimate partner violence, 70% of it is female perpetrated when it's one way. When only one partner is hitting, the other partner is not using violence to retaliate or defend themselves or anything else. It's just the one partner that's doing the violent behavior to the other partner. 70% of the time, it's a woman doing that behavior, right? And when the behavior is two-way, that is associated with more frequent violence, more frequent perpetration, in other words, from women, but not from men, which indicates that even when the violence is two-way, which can range from about half the time to about 2/3 of the time, depending on which study you look at, even when it's two-way, it's mostly female perpetrated or female initiated. Right? And most of the time, after the woman has initiated violence, if the man is violent at all, he is violent in self-defense. So in that situation, when a woman gets hurt, it is because the violence that the man has engaged in is done under circumstances that remove his control or reduce his control over the level of force he is using and the rapidness with which he is using that force. Things like you push a guy into a corner and start wailing on him, and he pushes back to get you away from him. He may push harder than he intended to. And even if he's just trying to push you away and run away from you so that he doesn't have to fight back against you, he may injure you in the process if you're female, or even if you're another dude. It's just the dudes know this and they pick their fights more carefully because of it. So if you really want to eliminate a significant portion of violence against women, you can start by teaching women not to hit first. Don't back a guy into a corner and start wailing on him. Don't punch him in the chest when you're mad at him. Don't yell and yell and yell and then eventually start pushing and shoving and hitting after you've worn him down to his last nerve and he can't control himself anymore. Right? Don't do those things. Instead, have reasonable, rational conversations. Don't deliberately push a guy's buttons and then complain when the button is the on button for his fight or flight syndrome or system. And maybe if women learned that, they would not initiate the violence that comes back on them. And the remainder, which is about 13% of the total incidents of domestic violence, where the perpetrator is just the man, and about, a minority, less than half of the rest of domestic violence, where it's the male initiating, it would be a lot easier to address and deal with that if you didn't get distracted by trying to treat all of the other types of violence that are initiated by women as if they were the fault of the male that she is targeting. Of course, feminists won't go for that. In fact, they will call misogyny and pull out that old, worn out, ripped, shredded, stained, and faded misogyny card, female victim card, right? Oh my gosh, you just want to make it okay for men to beat women. No, I want to make it not okay for women to beat men. I want it to be just as verboten for women to initiate violence against a man, because I think that there would be less violence overall if that were true. If both sexes faced taboos that would make you embarrassed to strike your partner, if both sexes would face public humiliation and legal consequences for engaging in violence against family members, that would significantly reduce the amount of violence overall. That's all I'm saying. It has nothing to do with wanting men to beat women, has nothing to do with not caring about the percentage, the number of murder victims who happen to be female victims killed by an intimate partner or other family member, and everything to do with pragmatic recognition of what can we do to reduce violence, what is the nature of the problem, What are the characteristics of the problem? What are the contributing factors to the problem? And how can we reduce the incidence of the problem? And until that type of approach is taken, there is no initiative that's ever going to happen that's going to accurately and effectively address the problem. No matter how much somebody proclaims to care about it, no matter how much somebody proclaims to love women and want to help them, the only thing these people are doing is gathering lots of money and then wasting a portion of it on false solutions and splitting the rest up among themselves. That's it. So I have very little sympathy for these feminist protesters. I think that they are clowns who aren't doing jack shit for women. They hate men. They don't care that there are women who are suffering or that there are men who are being abused and ignored or falsely accused. What they care about is how to line their own damn pockets and how to use this idea to give their governments greater control over the men in their countries. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck those guys.
Amen.
They can go fuck themselves.
All right. I hear that. Say it from the mountain. Huh? All right. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
I was just saying amen, but then I thought I should correct myself and say a women.
No. Amen is the correct term and it shouldn't be changed, but it's a good joke.
All right. So let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I got a super chow and a rumble rant. I'm going to read out really quick, and then we're going to get to the last story. Albatross gives us $5 and says, a lot of what you said about female violence stats can also be said about the trans community. It's more likely to be purported by other trans folk, bad breakups, jaded lovers, etc., than actual bigots. Well, it's interesting that the law is being spoken about as though it is like a patriarchal problem, but they don't really, the law doesn't get into specifics about who is, the perpetrators of the violence. So I don't know how many lesbians they have in Italy, but it's probably it's probably a big number they don't want to talk about.
There's something else that needs to be considered here. All right. Pretty much every country in the world that has any laws governing family violence has a law that penalizes for perpetration of violence against an intimate or partner, married partner or not, that generally, historically, has only targeted male perpetrators of violence against female partners, regardless of the level of violence female partners might engage in. Society has always cared all around the world whether or not men hit their intimate partners, their female intimate partners, but usually has ignored or laughed at men who have been victims of violence by their intimate partners. Just a point that needs to be acknowledged in that. We're not even doing anything different now. I mean, we are, but the world is not.
Yeah. That's true. So we also got a rumble rant from NovaFan who says, feminists, let's make it a crime for men to offend women. What, men would rather socialize with a chatbot instead of being a subservient to feminism? We must arrest men for negligence. Thank you for that. All right. So let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We're going to move on to the last one. And, okay. So on November 20th, the Ohio State overwhelmingly passed Senate Bill 174 by a bipartisan vote. So speaking of bipartisan votes, but this is like a W vote as opposed to an L vote, which happened in Italy, of 29-2, marking a major overhaul of the state's child custody laws. Sponsored by Democrat Senator Paula Hicks Hudson of Toledo and Republican Senator Teresa Gavaroni of Bowling Green, the 422-page legislation eliminates outdated concepts like shared parenting, sole custody, and split custody, replacing them with flexible parenting plan framework that allocates specific responsibilities such as education decisions, healthcare, and residency to a designated parent based solely on the child's best interest. The child-centered approach aims to modernize family court processes, promote meaningful involvement from both parents when appropriate, and adapt to diverse family dynamics, including those involving domestic violence or unique circumstances. The bill now advances to the Ohio House for consideration, where it could become law if approved and signed by governor. The passage drew widespread praise from judicial groups like the Ohio Judicial Conference, the Ohio State Bar Association, and domestic violence advocates such as the Ohio Domestic Violence Network, who hailed it as a long overdue reform that prioritizes children's well-being and reduces adversarial winner-takes-all battles in custody disputes. However, it sparked controversy among some parental rights organizations and family law critics who argue the changes could empower courts excessively, prolong litigation, inflate legal costs for families, and erode parents' fundamental rights by deviating from presumptions of equal shared parenting supported by public opinion. Opponents, including those testifying in committee hearings, expressed concerns that the bill might exacerbate mental health issues for children or divorce by incentivizing conflict over cooperative arrangements, though supporters counter that its tailored plans better protect vulnerable kids without rigid defaults.
I don't know what the fuck.
This was a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
It is a mixed bag. And what I've been able to gather just from looking at it, and I am not going to claim to have gone through the entire thing, but I've read some summary and some of the parts of it verbatim and so on. What it's done that's bad is it's removed the automatic presumption that time with dad is as important as time with mom. Equally shared parenting, the basis for equally shared parenting is the recognition of the fact that and children of involved fathers have all kinds of benefits that they get from their father's involvement in their lives. And it's not always understood exactly how that happens, what specific like mechanism is involved. And it can be anything from big deals to the kids seeing the dad get up and go to work every day to little things like one moment in time when dad and son or daughter are just playing pitch and catch with a baseball or a softball out in the backyard. And the child gets frustrated because they have more difficulty catching the ball than dad does. And dad coaches the child on how to deal with that frustration in a sportsmanlike manner, as opposed to in a childish, wimpy, whiny manner, or an aggressive, angry manner, or a quitter's manner. And it builds character in the child in ways that can affect the child's future stick-to-itiveness and approach to things like difficult homework assignments in later schooling, or difficult test taking, difficult assignments on the job when they go to work, difficult relationships with people that they have to have some degree of association with, say on the job or as neighbors and stuff like that. So a lot of times it gets devalued. Well, all he did was go play baseball with the child. That's not parenting. Actually, yes, that is absolutely parenting. Similarly, dad might sit there and watch TV with the kids sometimes, but maybe dad says we're not going to watch, I don't know, what was on when we were kids that was shit, Captain Planet. We are going to watch Hogan's Heroes. And because that was on, reruns of that were on when I was a kid. And that was kind of like my dad. My dad didn't do the namby-pamby. We're going to teach you a lesson with this TV shows. We'd watch stuff like that, like Hogan's Heroes or MASH or WKRP in Cincinnati. Like I watched grown-up shows when I was a little kid. I learned to understand grown-up humor, and I also learned to understand grown-up ways of responding to conflicts and issues. And those TV shows did display real world behaviors and how people experienced wrong consequences or right consequences, rewards for different ways of handling things. And I learned through humor about things like using my ingenuity to solve problems that seemed impossible to handle, and not always expecting everything to go the way I wanted it to. And then sometimes terrible things happen and there's not jack shit you can do about it, and you have to just tread water until things get better. And that's not non-parenting. That's parenting a guy's way. So when the court says, well, it's in the best interest of the child if they're going to school from mom's house every morning, what they may be doing is taking away the child's opportunity to see maybe how dad streamlines the morning routine differently than how mom streamlines the morning routine, and figure out what elements of ingenuity and prioritization of things each parent is right about, or better at, or is more right for them in terms of, and they miss out on that. Right? The other thing is, it gives women, the bad thing is it gives women a tool they could turn around and pretend that the child is experiencing a mental health crisis over having to go back and forth between mom and dad's house, and try to use that to take the child away from dad. I didn't see, and this doesn't mean it's not there, but I didn't see anything in the law addressing attempts at parental alienation of the other parent as a form of contempt or any other type of criminal behavior. There didn't seem to be any consequences if parents tried to limit the child's time with the other parent, or used the courts to limit and lost, like making allegations and stuff like that. And there wasn't anything, I didn't see anything in it. And like I said, I didn't go through the entire thing yet. But so far, I haven't seen anything in it that mandates prosecution for process crimes when the process crime is being done specifically to prevent the other side from having something to latch on to try to further their goals in a custody battle. So, dad's fighting for equal custody rights, or any degree of custody rights, and mom's fighting to make sure he doesn't get those custody rights, and she doesn't share information, or she that she's legally obligated to share, or she lies, she commits perjury in court, files a false complaint with police, makes the child lie, something along those lines. Those are all criminal actions that should be mandatory that those get prosecuted when she's trying to use them to influence the outcome of the case. And I didn't see any, like, custody law needs to have that mandated, because women use organizations like the women's domestic violence shelters and stuff that supported this legislation. They use those organizations to strong arm right now the courts when they commit those types of crimes in the course of trying to influence the outcome of a custody battle, to keep them from doing anything to hold the woman accountable legally for committing those crimes. And it works. Like in the 7 Years in Hell story, the woman in that story, the vexatious litigant in that story, committed process crimes targeting the victim and targeting his wife, his second wife, and even targeting other family members, his siblings, some of her family members, in order to influence the outcome of that case in other cases. And at no point was she held accountable. The courts didn't prosecute her for that. No, perjury charges, no charges for lying to police during an investigation or filing false complaints, nothing. Right? Because Artemis House here in Dayton pushed the court to not do that, with the argument that it would be encouraging violence against women if they didn't allow her to lie, basically. So, yeah, this is going to be something that the men's rights movement is going to have to push back against. It's going to be important for people in Ohio to write to your legislators and send them information from the father involvement research. Shoot, it's FIRA. I think it's association. I'm going to look really quick what that stands for. Father Involvement Research Alliance, not association. It's Canadian, but they have quite a bit of research showing the benefits of father involvement, that it needs to be driven home to Ohio legislators that both parents are important to a child, that both parents need to be present and mature in a child's life. You can't just have the mother take the child away from the father and say it's in the child's best interest to not have to go back and forth. It's in the child's best interest that both parents work together as a team to raise the child to the best of their ability as a family unit. And the next best thing is that both parents have equal opportunity to contribute positively to the child's development. And if you take away the presumption of equally shared parenting rights, you destroy that presumption of equal opportunity. And you're actually not acting in the best interest of the child. You're acting in the best interest of women's groups. So that's what they need to know. That's what they need to hear. That's the letters they need to receive, the calls they need to get, the emails they need to get, tweet at them, and focus in this instance on Republicans, because Democrats don't give a fuck. I hate to say that, but it's true. Republicans at least care about facts when it comes to this. They're not gynocentric enough to ignore the fact that kids need their dads. Their crime is blaming fathers in this situation. But it's unfair to blame fathers if the courts are presuming the woman to be the primary caregiver and the more necessary parent, and presuming it to be in the best interest of the child, that the child spends most of their time with the mother and the father's time with the child is not that important. Right? You can't blame the fathers for that, because the mechanisms that you put into place don't allow them access after that. So it's important that Republicans hear that the government should not be interfering in the father's parent-child relationship and then blaming dads and shaming them for the results of that. So that's your homework, guys. If you live in Ohio, and if you live outside of Ohio, you can write to our politicians and just make fun of our state for passing this stupid law.
All right. Mike, do you have any thoughts, or do you think Hannah?
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck's going on here, but it all sounds pretty sus. It all sounds open to interpretation. And whenever anything in family courts is open to interpretation, it means mother good, father bad, especially when it all comes down to the decision of the judge, who is almost always a feminist simp. I'm looking at this from the UK, where trial by jury is about to become a thing of the past, thanks to Saint David Lammy, a functional retard. And no one's talking about what this means for family courts. What it means is women can get away with absolutely butt-fuck anything, be it civil or criminal, because it all comes down to the whims of the judge. And our judges are dyed-in-the-wool simps to a man. And I do mean to a man. So permit me to consider Ohio based on what happens in the UK, because this will happen to you too. The feminist vanguard in any given US state has invariably already happened in some European state, probably the UK. So designated parent, right? That just means mother, doesn't it? Based solely on the child's best interests. That just means give the child to the mother. That's what it has always meant. Diverse family dynamics. Okay, the clue there is diverse. That means, diversity means no men allowed. That's what it always meant. Domestic violence or unique circumstances. That just means the mother feels afraid, so we should give her whatever she wants. I'm not trying to blackpill anyone. I'm just saying this sounds like more of the same. It sounds like more wishy-washy legalese that any judge can interpret any way they like, and that means they will adjudicate in favor of the mother every single time.
You are right. You're not wrong.
I just want to hear words to the effect of the mother no longer gets to do whatever the fuck she likes all the time. I just want to hear words to that effect, because that is the fucking problem. I'm sick of everyone arranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Fucking steer the ship away from the iceberg, please. Well, I mean, we already hit the iceberg long ago, and the ship is basically underwater at this point. I guess what I want is some assurance that some men are allowed on the fucking lifeboats, given that the ship has already hit the fucking iceberg. Not that the crew have been given license to use their own judgment as to who gets the lifeboats, when that crew has already been trained to give the lifeboats to the women and the children. Is this change going to result in some men getting to escape in the lifeboats because of the merit they have as parents? Have the people in charge of the lifeboats been sufficiently deprogrammed so as to finally be able to say, I don't give a shit that you're a woman, you're fucking insane, and you beat your children. I don't care if you call me a misogynist. I don't care if you run to the press to browbeat me into giving women everything and men nothing. I'm not going to cave in to your psychotic demands. Get to fuck. Tell me this is what you're going to do. Stop mincing your words and just tell me you're going to undo what has been done. Until that happens, I'm going to assume you'll just keep doing what you've always been doing. Give it to me straight. Don't give it to me gay. I'm sick and tired of you giving it to me gay. Give it to me straight. I've been fucked too many times, and my ass hurts.
Yeah, I can't blame you for that. To explain what's going on with the law, based on the Titanic terms that you mentioned, right? Picture there are 50 Titanics, 50 separate Titanics that are all loosely bound to each other through an agreement that have all hit the iceberg because of that loose binding and some other factors. And about half of them, it's trending upwards, have determined that the lifeboats have 50% male access, in terms of like the lifeboats being custody of their children. But Ohio hadn't done that. People have been writing to Ohio legislators to ask Ohio to do that. And their response is to say, we are changing from the judge being guided by the best interests of the children in the lifeboats as to which parent belongs in the lifeboat with the child, and having to choose between one or the other, to judges getting to choose based on the best interest of the child as to whether or not one or both parents go in the lifeboat. So does that really sound dramatically different? Because it doesn't to me.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. All right, then. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, guys, for your thoughts on that. And
sausage. Thank you, everyone,
Yeah,
for
quite-
attending the long
Yeah.
sausage.
quite
But
the
we
sausage. All right, so let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. Yeah, I mean, I would have taken a story out, but they were all pretty good, so
Important.
it's like just let them all in. But
Yeah.
let us know what you guys think about all of this that we talked about on the show today. Thank you guys for coming. We're gonna go now and look at this article. It'll probably be like a shorter after show, just because I got to get up early tomorrow. So yeah, we're looking at this article. Men are in trouble, but whose fault is it? And in light of all of the stuff we cover, usually the after show is kind of like, let's just say it's interestingly relevant to what's like what we're referring to, because you can see like the direction things are going in the news, and then you look at like the way it's being discussed in the kind of media space. And so with that, we're gonna head into the patron show. If you guys want to join us for that, go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe and set up a monthly subscription. And hopefully we'll see you guys. If you guys want to see what the Discord server is like, you can go for free by going to badgernation.online. There's always stuff going on there, and it's a pretty good community. I would recommend it. I don't do a lot of Discord, but I am on that Discord. So yeah, check that one out. And with that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Machines!
Men's right activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.